on to accessing our true and higher self and how it works. My name is Franco De Nicola, and I'm the one that's going to be presenting this evening. And for the people that are not familiar with my work, basically the content that I share is free from any dogmas, religion, handed down beliefs, stories, spiritually adopted ideas, and so on. And the work that I share is not channeled by anything. Most of everything that comes through is coming through from a soul perspective that my soul is sharing, and uses this physicality to share what I share. Now, for me, it's been quite an interesting ride from birth, because I came here with a very specific purpose as a facilitator to assist these transformations that we are going through. So as a child, I had a very different viewpoint about life. I could see the dualities in a sense of understanding our true nature and the nature that we adopted as an idea that was true. And watching that and looking at how people worked and how things were being done, it gave me a really good understanding where we were standing in our way of doing things on the planet. And also to understand humanity and the stages that humanity went through. So it gave me a really good opportunity to look at that. Plus, I had the opportunity to have what we can call the human experience in the way that others had it. Again, always that little bit more intuitive aspect, which we all have, but in my particular situation, it was pretty outgoing in a sense, where it made itself very present. And then, of course, the opportunity to be able to see multi-layers of our dimensions and so forth had given me the opportunity to kind of see all the aspects of it. As for my soul, it's coming from a realm that is, at this point in time, from a universal state. So in essence, my soul has never been what can we call it, formed or played out or incarnated on a particular planet. It was basically named as or labeled as a planet jumper, so it moved around, giving a variety of experiences and so forth. So the content I'm going to give you, use as what resonates with you and what doesn't. You may not be ready for that at this point in time. If you are, then it's great. When you are, it will be there for you within your own system. So tonight we're going to play with true self and higher self, and we've heard this so often. You know, people talk about the higher self and the true self. And what does that mean? You know, if there's a higher self, is there a lower self? And what does that mean? So there's a higher and a lower. Why are we playing with both? And then, of course, there's the true self. So does that mean there's an untrue self that is playing out? The thing is who we truly are, and that's something we'll have to look at this point in time to get a good understanding of how this all works. To understand who we are, we are not this physicality, and I know many of you have heard this and understood this at some level. You know, we're not just this physicality. This physicality is just something we've adopted and are utilizing at this point in time. We've all, at a soul perspective, have had many lives. Some souls that have come on the planet never had human lives, but they may have had lives on other planets, or may have been in the non-form state for a good portion of its existence, and has decided at this point in time to come on the planet. Of course, the planet, we have many, many different types of souls here, and what we can call also beings, which bring forth certain levels of entity or identification of themselves, which they are sharing and intermingling with our experience here on planet Earth. The purpose of all of that is just to give a real heavy-duty mix, and also to bring in different energies and different ways of seeing, so that we actually create an opening on a collective scale to create a shift outside of what we have adopted as a way of life. Okay? So to put things in perspective, to see who we truly are, I know I can't do justice with the way I'm going to present it, but what we're looking at, who we are, and this is not, we are in this field which exists, everything exists in the field. And in this field, we're looking at basically pure potentiality, expanding consciousness, and all spectrums of energy and light that is the existence of all that is. When you look at what all of this represents, and this is kind of just a box that I'm showing, but within this whole field, we have multitudes and multitudes of galaxies and universes, and we have planets and solar systems of different sorts, but we have multi dimensions and expressions and so forth, which basically is all for the whole aspect of it. So what we're doing is playing within this field, and our individual souls are a facet of all of this. It does not ever leave, and this is why, you know, people think a lot of times, and I've heard these sayings at times, is that, you know, we leave and here we are, we want to go home. Okay, with the interesting part of it, we're always already home, because everything is created within this field. You are in the field, even though you've created an isolated aspect of what you can call observation point. So in this essence, when you're looking at it at this point, you are within. So we are all little facets of the whole. It doesn't mean that we're not a small fraction of it. We are still the whole, but we've actually taken the full parameter of who we are in every level, and we have isolated and stripped it down to a point where we created a focal point. And within that focal point, we are creating realities and stepping into what we can call incarnations, going through dimensions, and having various different experiences. Now, each of these little facets of yourself, which is the whole really, as source, basically you have tuned it down so that you can actually now have what looks like isolated aspects of experiences which you will expand. So it's like anything. We're looking at one big picture, and we take one spot within the picture, and then we amplify it. And by amplifying, you can see the depth of it. However, at this point, what we're doing is we're taking that small facet of it, and it goes out and play in the full expansion of all it is. And within that, it actually expands. And what is expanding is further consciousness. So when we're looking at it as a whole, it can experience itself. However, if all of these aspects, which is us, aspects of ourselves, go out and play within all these realms and experiences and so forth, each one actually becomes more enriched with experiences. And what we call gaining enlightenment and gaining further levels of essence. Now, even though it is isolated, it's connected to all of it. So any experience that we have within it is experienced throughout the whole. And our capacity of what we can do is the capacity of all existence. So anything that, at a mind level, we can't even put it into terms. However, if we're looking at it from a perspective of saying all possibilities and probabilities, you know, is all within there, which we can tap into. And that's why we're going to talk about the true self, higher self, and so forth, and how that works within us on this incarnation. And of course, it works on all other incarnations. Now, when we're looking at that, this playmate that goes out, which you are, and we all are, we go out and we create realities within this field of pure potentiality. And in doing so, we are gaining experiences through these creations. So we activate and are fully engaged in our creative abilities. And we do that in ways that at a mind level and a physical level, we really have a difficult time grasping. But on a level where you have this higher level of understanding or accessing at that point where you have the fuller access, then it's completely different. There you see the whole aspect of it. So even the idea when we come onto the planet, so let's go back to planet Earth, and here we are, we incarnated, taken on a physical form. What is a physical form? Is it actually physical? No, it's actually a stream of light. And the stream of light basically is creating a reality. So what we can also refer to as a holographic experience. The planet is holographic. The solar system's holographic. The galaxies, the universes, and all of anything that is created is all through a holographic. But the way we're designed, we can take these holographic expressions and experience and use opportunities to learn and grow within it. So each one of us are adventurers within this field that's gone out and play. And like I said earlier, you have played on so many dimensions, so many different planets. You've been in and out of incarnations. You've assisted other facets of yourself and so forth. And so there are many, 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 many aspects and levels that you have experienced. So when you look at it, when people look at themselves and say, well, this is who I am, and what does that represent? Well, most times when we're looking at who we are looking at the physical representation. But it's not even that, because we're looking at the ideas that we've adopted and what we have looked at and saying, okay, this is who I am. I am this particular role. I am in this particular gender, that I am, this particular education and skill set and so forth, and this is who I am. Now, what that does is reinforces the smallness that you are. And that was purposeful. I mean, we don't create things without purpose. We wanted to learn that part. However, what we're going through right now is an opportunity for us to do something that hasn't been done before in previous incarnations. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist in other realms and things of that nature, because some of the realms have actually gone through different levels and have created other experiences where they have actually taken access to a larger part to be integrated within their present holographic experience. Now, they're not going to get the full, because in doing so, it actually changes the whole experience. It's like for us, if we actually tapped into all of that we are, this particular experience that we are in a holographic can't even be maintained. It would just vanish, okay? Our existence would vanish. Our existence would be back in no more this small isolated aspect of itself. It would just basically expand right into the whole. And you become the whole. Even though you are the whole, but your consciousness and everything becomes the whole, so you're not able to create something separate and create experiences at multi-levels and multi-experiences. So in looking at all of that at this point in time, remembering who we are at this point is getting a facet of it and seeing ourselves that we are not only this physicality, we're much more than that. And this physicality is just a representation that we've adopted to utilize at this time for our journey and experience. Now, of course, we're not limited to this experience. We have the choice of how we create it, what we do, what we don't do, and so forth in the dance. But there are many other aspects of how this all comes about. I won't get into extreme details, because that would take multi-videos that we will do, or streamings at a later date, and we'll have to break it down piece by piece. But I wanted to give you a taste of what this higher aspect of ourself is and who we are, and how we go out and play. So all of us have chosen to take on a physical form for one reason or another, okay? And the physical form that we are projecting is utilized on so many levels. It's not something that we say, okay, it's just a soul perspective, which is that part of it that's coming through and so forth. This interesting part is every aspect of ourselves is linked to other aspects of ourselves. So it's not just merged in all of this, it's connected to every aspect. And then we have sectors, if you want to call it, just for a lack of a better, of areas where you say, okay, this is from this universe, and within this universe we have galaxies, and within this galaxy we have solar systems, and so forth. And then from solar systems we have planets. From planets then we go down to the individuals, the expressions of themselves. It's still all within that field, but you're in there completely. And what you're doing is that each of your, or what you can call your experience, is affecting every other soul on the planet. So in essence, whatever you're doing, how you're experiencing, you are transmitting and receiving at all different levels with all other aspects of yourself. So when you look at another individual, it's basically another you, because it's all from the same field, same cluster, same connection. But it goes down to a little bit more finite, finer aspect, so that we do not get an overload of what we're taking on. Now, when we choose to incarnate and take on a role, and again, I emphasize the whole idea that it's just a role. When you do come on the planet and you take on this particular role, to make the experience much more expansive for yourself, you're going to want to really integrate that particular experience, and you want to disconnect as much as possible, veil it up, do whatever you need to do to basically not have full access to who you are, so that in that term and that form of respect, of observing, you are able to get lost in the game. Okay? What better way, not knowing the whole while you're playing the game? Because then you can forget who you are and you can really play the human experience. Now, there's a lot more levels to that, but we're going to go through that aspect of it. So I must thank my partner for creating this drawing, because I cannot draw like this. And for me, if I was drawing this, you would be seeing a stick man. That's about the extent of my drawing skills. And my handwriting is not that great either, so she was able to express all of that. Okay, so the purpose of the human being coming onto the planet, or what we call a soul coming onto the planet, is to really have a human experience, to grow and advance and expand. Right now, to go back and looking at all of this, what's happening on the planet? The planet right now, what's happening is that we are going through a very powerful, accelerated process to be able to actually upgrade the human experience and the upgrade of the playground we call Earth. And part of that is there are souls that are coming in more advanced than what the human, and when I say advanced, they've just been able to express and learn and grow further than some others that have decided to take the slower route. So the ones that taken the faster route actually created a trail in front, but the ones that decide to take the slower route, there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's perfect, because the one that takes the slower route will get a deeper integration and are able to kind of take all the little facets and pieces that the one that's a little bit on the faster track would have missed. So you're actually going into the nitty-gritty of the human experience and everything that it represents. So each direction and what pace we take on and so forth is all instrumental when you're looking at all that it plays out. It's not something saying, well, one's better than the other. There's no such thing. You know, even as a soul we're looking at, everything is source. It's from a source essence. Is one more advanced than the other? No. One may have achieved more enlightenment, meaning more access to themselves, but the only reason they would have done that, okay, is just that they've taken certain routes that either they've learned a lot quicker, or they've actually fast-tracked and jumped certain things and not needing to repeat all that they wanted to repeat, or to basically take on a route that did not have all the little nitty-gritty expressions. So since we've gotten to a point right now that not only our planet, our solar system, and the galaxy and universe has stepped up into advancing itself, so to upgrade everything, there's many facets that are facilitating with us. And one of the things is right now is for us to be more connected to our higher self, who we truly are. And when we say that, we're basically tapping into that consciousness and so forth. Because really what's changing is the shifting in consciousness. It's expansion of consciousness so that our reality expands and our creations expand, so that we are creating at a different level and a different degree of experiences are come about that. Now, I will go into details at another time on the actual operating systems and so forth. So now, bringing us back to looking at where do we get our resources of who we are, we're looking at ourselves. Now, many of you know about the different chakras and how these chakras are instrumental. Now, I know that some people have talked about that chakras itself are, dissolving and so forth, and I agree in some degree that there will be a time that we are not going to create separate channels for communication. And at this point in time, we're still utilizing, but we're ramped it right up so that we are using it much more efficiently. So when we are no longer needing these particular channels, what happens is we go into what we call oneness. And through that oneness, we now open up a web of channels of connection, which already is there, but they're just kind of all dampened down, to be able to communicate and receive and so forth on so many levels without having isolated channels. What are we talking about isolated channels? So when we're looking at the chakras, let's take a look at the root chakra. The root chakra, pretty well, all the chakras, every chakra, is an actual transmitter and receiver. And it is finely tuned for us to integrate this communication that comes through each of the chakras. For example, the root chakra is our connection to the planet and everything on the planet itself. This is why we talk about grounding and so forth, and if your root chakra is not, fully opened or something of that nature, then we kind of lose the connection and the grounding, which is referred to. And really, is it grounding? It's just basically reestablishing the communication that you have with planet Earth and everything on the planet itself, including life, all types of life forms and so forth, because everything has sentient beings and everything has a consciousness to it and everything has something to share. So basically, the root chakra is your transmitter receiver to planet Earth. So planet Earth is talking to you all the time. From all the experiences that it's gaining to all the physicalities that are connected to it, including the animal kingdom and everything else that's on the planet. So there is that communication established. Now, planet Earth, you can call it Gaia, whatever you want to call it, that is our connection point. So our experience in the physical form, it is transmitted through our root chakra and it is shared with the planet. And everyone's doing that. At the same time, whatever experiences that are kind of collective on a perspective of the planet itself and everything on it, is also communicating back and is upgrading your own way of communicating, understanding, and also uploading certain codes and so forth into your physicality, because in essence it does communicate mainly with the physicality, and then the physicality of course connects with the rest of you. So the root chakra is used for that. So that's one channel of your higher perspective of communication that you have. The next one is your sacral chakra. That is used when we isolate connections with very specific individuals. So if you want to have a very intimate connection that is more finite and that is now shared between two individuals at this point in time, that chakra communicates pretty well from physical to physical, but it also creates a connection for emotions and energy and everything else that is being shared on a more intimate or more detailed way. So in essence, the sacral becomes a more sacred connection, and it's a communication back and forth. So it's a sharing that takes place, and that sharing is very powerful in advancement of both individuals that are involved and the various individuals that get involved along the way. So that is used as a communication channel. And this is where, when the sacral is working properly, what happens is, even getting intimate with someone specifically, there is not a separateness of self-indulgence. It is more of a merging and marrying of energies, consciousness, and the frequencies within it, and becoming one within that experience. And that's how it's created through the sacral chakra, which has a very powerful level of communication. what we talk about the solar plexus, our solar plexus is our connection to multitudes of physicalities. So our solar plexus is a transmitter receiver also, and it communicates with all the various physicalities that are on the planet. And in a sense, some people say, well, does it connect with the animal kingdom and so forth? To a certain degree, yes. But it has a stronger connection with, at times, coming in through the root chakra. But in essence, there is a level of that level of communication. So when you want to experience something and you don't want to experience it everything through your own personal physicality, you can tap into what other physicalities that are going through similar experiences are able to be downloaded into your physicality, so that way you can feel it, you can adopt and utilize certain parts of it and then let go of the rest of it. So that we do not have to be from A to Z. You can choose which parts you want to experience in physical form, and the rest of it will be fill in the blank from when we are sharing with all the other souls on the planet, or what we can call other physicalities on the planet. Now, of course, as you know, physicalities have a variance of difference. There's male and female, and then there's also a variance of different cultures and so forth. So the makeup is slightly different. Their experience in physical form is different in some cases, and in other cases a lot more. So that is also shared. So you get to understand the different levels of experiences within the physical form, but also what the physical form experiences through various things of going on too. So if they're having a very pleasurable experience, you get to gain that. If they're having what we label as less than pleasurable, you'll be able to tap into that. So you have access to all of that. And that is all coming through the solar plexus. So if you look at it, you have access to the learning and experience, while you share too, of all the physicalities on the planet at all times. And that is there. Now, of course, we don't have it always fully open or fully receptive to it, but the body is receiving a lot of it at this point in time. The same thing with the sacral and also the root chakra. Now, when we're talking the heart chakra, which people are a lot more familiar with and so forth, they understand it. What is the heart chakra? It's again, transmitter receiver. To what? Transmitter receiver to your soul. It communicates with your soul. Now, your soul is this facet of yourself that is from the essence. But what is the soul? The soul is a recorder. The soul actually records all experiences and also initiates various experiences that it chooses to play with. Now, it's not limited only to that, but it does play a very powerful role. Now, when we're talking about connecting to ourself, you're saying, okay, I'm connecting to my soul. My soul has access to its origins, to its existence, to the levels of consciousness and so forth. Yes and no. So if we're saying that this is our soul here as just a representation, you're saying, okay, if I'm tapping into my soul, I know everything. Well, yes and no. It has access to everything, but it did not allow itself to have access to everything, because to have experiences and you have access to everything, then at that point in time you cannot have the experience the way you choose to do it for the purpose of going through this and expansion within it. So as the soul at this point in time, you create veils and so forth, and you basically start removing them as you choose at that point in time after having experiences. Now, at a soul level, you're basically is the part that's immortal. Now, all of it is immortal because nothing ever ends up in existence. It just transforms. That's true. However, at a soul level, basically it's always in existence. So in essence, every single incarnation and non-incarnational state, so we call them form and non-form state, the soul is recording. It's recording, it's experiencing, and it's also outlining what it wants to learn and experience and so forth as a part of what is chosen to its particular role. So each soul has a particular signature in itself. So in essence, not to replicate the roles that are being played by others, other souls, so that we can have an expanded variety. It's no use, like, For example, the signature role that it plays out is like, for example, the dialing code of your phone number. You're the only one that's going to have your phone number, and you will be able to communicate through that once people connect with you and so forth. It's no different than that, or a radio station. So if you're tuning into that particular frequency, you're basically communicating, transmitting within that frequency. So the particular soul that we're talking about, that it's in your physicality or operating within your physicality, at this point in time plays the role of saying, okay, I'm going to create these experiences. But again, what does the souls do? The souls just keep reincarnating and taking on different forms. On this planet, other planets, then it goes for a period of time without any incarnation, where it chooses to facilitate other aspects of itself. So it gets an opportunity to experience many, many, many aspects of it. And it's been there for eons. It's not like one lifetime. It's numerous and numerous and numerous of lifetimes. And that's even before any form of resetting and restructuring that takes place. So here's the soul. Now, as part of the experience, the soul decided that we were going to create a split. That means we're going to take this soul and we're going to create a duplicate soul within that soul. So basically now it's two souls with exactly the same signature. All other souls have different signatures, but each one of us has a twin soul, which is identical when it comes to soul. So the signature, the frequency it operates within is the same. However, it does not go out and have the same experiences. So each one of us has a twin soul. Now, as a twin soul, one soul may be on this planet. We are on this planet, so let's talk about this planet. So we're on this planet. The other soul may be on the planet too, and that's happening much more often now. In a different form, of course. It's not in the same physicality, and there won't be a resemblance of the look, but there's a recognition once you meet. And not only a recognition, there's a very strong connection where it's like, this is me, okay? Because the signatures are identical. So it's like having a party line within your phone, where you pick up the phone and you don't even have to dial, it's already there. Where others, you have to create some form of connection. So here is your twin soul. So now, your soul has had many, many, many experiences. So you're who you are in physical form, with a mind and so forth, basically is communicating with your soul back and forth and utilizing what the soul decided to take in this incarnation as a list of things it wants to experience, wrap up, and so forth, and be able to transmit it. And I will show you how that works moving forward, and communicate at that level. But it also has access to all of the experiences it's ever had, and also certain levels of higher consciousness that is coming from Source Essence that it's allowing itself to be. But at the same time, it's also connected, more of like a direct aspect, connected to your twin soul. So it also has resources to tap into all the experiences of your twin souls ever had, and also what it's experiencing at that point in time. So that means even if this soul is off planet at this moment and is on a different planet, it is communicating and sharing that information. So we're doing that automatically at all times. How much of it we use, how much we tend to pay attention to, that's where the difference comes in. So in essence, when that is taking place within the communication between the two, it chooses how much it wants to utilize as part of its experience. So now it's got dual aspect of tapping into, of information and so forth, that can be brought into the physical form, which will enhance the experience, which will change various ways that you want to see and experience life, but at the same time, how you connect with all other aspects of yourself. But it doesn't stop there. This is still all part of the heart chakra. We're also connected to what we call soul families. So the soul families is also linked. So it comes into this perspective here. I mean, this is not the perfect drawing of how to explain it, but you have your soul family, which is made up of an oversoul. That means a soul that kind of overlooks. Now, you are part of this oversoul, so you're not outside of it. But within the oversoul, you also have all these pairs that are existing. And in total, you have 12 pairs. So in essence, you have 24 separate souls, but there's 12, so there's 2 of each of the same signature. Now, so all of these souls that are out there doing their part, and the interesting part that makes it much more to be understood is that many of these are on other planets, or in non-form, or in other dimensions, or playing in parallel worlds and so forth, whatever it wants to play with. And all the experiences from all of this that's gained is fed back to the oversoul. So it's a pool recorder of information, and that's coming back from all of that. So you can tap into the oversoul and be able to get or tap into experiences that you can integrate as part of your, pretty well at this point in time, part of your experience in this human form. So you could see how much more access you have. Now, of course, that is also connected to other oversouls, which is the next level. Again, it's all broken down. This is part of that, and of course, it gets into duplications. So in essence, one cluster is about 144, but then you're looking at 144 of breakdown before you get to the one cluster that you usually allow yourself to access up to while you're choosing through this. Now, that doesn't mean in this incarnation you'll be able to do that, but I'm just saying you have many, 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 many levels of that available. So that's all done through your heart chakra. So when people are saying, well, connect to your heart, what it does is actually you're connecting, first of all, to your personal soul. If there's not enough resources there and you want to get a different perspective, you tap into your twin soul. And this is kind of done fairly easily, automatically. And then you can tap into your oversoul, and then you can bring in other aspects of yourself. So you have all of this at your disposal to use while you're here to play this game. So that is what the heart chakra plays. And that here, again, what cuts off the connections that we have, and this is why the reminder keeps coming in, we got to tap into our heart chakra, we got to tap into our heart. Basically, we're looking at that. Now, the heart is interconnected with your heart chakra because at this point in time, the information, what we call energy and information, is sent through the heart, and the heart is actually one of the distributors that distributes energy to and consciousness throughout the physicality and upgrades the physicality as it's going along. Now, of course, like I was saying earlier, we have veils. We put the veils there purposely to cut ourselves back from the amount of accessibility we have so that we can continue the human experience to the degree that we choose to until, we choose to move on further. When we're looking at the next level, we're looking at the throat chakra. The throat chakra is a chakra that communicates with creation. That means it's through sound, it's through also form. So basically it's tapping into the field of form that is shared within a collective, and there's levels of collective. So we have the collective of the planet, the collective of the solar system, the collective of the galaxy, and the collective of the universe, and of course source. So through the throat chakra, you're basically facilitating and receiving ways to create form, to create experiences in a sense of what we would relate to material form. There is no material form, it's just a field of light, but it creates within that light. And within that, you can also tap in also to what is already in the field of potentiality of creation. And when I say that, we're not talking about the field of this magnitude, we're talking the field within the clusters that you have. We isolate from tapping that part because it would be far too much to access while trying to have a human experience. So that's the role of the throat chakra that we're looking at. So we're communicating in that level through the form, through the energy of form and potentiality of form. Then we look at the third eye. The third eye chakra, you know, a lot of people are opening up the third eye, the pineal gland, and all the other things that they're talking about. So what does the third eye represent? The third eye represents, again, it's a transmitter-receiver, but it's a transmitter-receiver that communicates, again, with every single soul on the planet, every single soul off planet, all the different souls on all other planets, and also then it also has access to collective consciousness. Now, of course, the collective consciousness is on all different levels. So we're talking cluster collective consciousness, which would be, say, your neighborhood or your family dynamics. Those are all two separate clusters, unless they're all in the same cluster, which means that they're all within the same vicinity of communication. Then you have also the next level, different clusters that exist. You can go into the collective consciousness. That means all the consciousness that has been experienced and accessed up to this point in time on everyone on the planet at this point. So you're basically looking at collective consciousness at that level. But then it gives you collective consciousness of the whole solar system. So each of the planets within our solar system, we have various input that we gain from the ones that share the space there and their experiences and their connection with us, and that is also part of the access. But then we have consciousness, we can tap into the consciousness of the galaxy, and then of course the universe, and we have access to Source. Now, being that we are part of all the Source, why are we using this particular chakra? Because we're trying to keep it within a certain band within that transmission and receiving, so that we don't get more than we can utilize in this human experience, because it is very delicate. If you want to have the more finite experience of the human experience, bringing in all of that would be a major overload. Of course, the mind wouldn't even be able to handle it. So in essence, that's what the third eye is all about, that particular chakra. So it's your transmission receiving. So in essence, what we're looking at as you open it up, you have more access. But what you're doing is, again, we have veils, and you start removing the veils. The veils act as filters, allowing only a certain amount of information to come through, a certain level of communication to come through, and so forth. However, as we're going through these advancements, a lot of it is coming off. Then we have the crown chakra. Now I'm just going to stick to the 7. The crown chakra is basically our full connection to Source itself, to the pure potentiality. It is the energy force that actually, the stream of pure potentiality and light and consciousness and everything that actually holds the form of all of this existence and all other existence that takes place. So in essence, there's that connection where you're communicating with the highest aspect of yourself, which is basically you, in an unfiltered way. So you're basically communicating at that degree. So a lot of times what we do is we put a plate, or we put a field or a block, if you want to call it that, to limit or reduce to a certain degree, or filter out a certain degree, or just block it all completely for only periods of time. Only for us to really get lost in the human experience if there is something that we need to have that is going to be an interference if we are having this information coming through, this higher level of consciousness and so forth. So all of it that we are creating is so perfectly designed. Okay? So for us now, when we're talking about accessing our true and higher self, we're basically looking at it through all of this, and we're basically communicating. Now, as I said before, to look at the communication, let's say, well, this is our right brain, and this is our left brain. So left brain, right brain. The communication that we have at this point in time is when we are communicating from the heart chakra, we're basically communicating at the right brain. Sorry to mess up the beautiful picture here. You're communicating with the right brain. what is the right brain? A lot of people know what that is. The right brain is basically the intuitive, the creative aspect of ourselves. So that part of the brain, what it does is actually takes on information and creates realities within it, or ideas of reality and potentialities within it. So for example, we're tapping into our heart chakra, and our soul basically, and we're taking this, whatever information that's been gathered, it's streamed here, through that is now bringing it to the right brain. So the right brain takes this information and starts to process it and looks at it and say, well, how can we utilize it and so forth. Now, part of that information is coming in is also being streamed, the information of how we want to experience life because of how purposeful it may be for us. So that is streamed into the right brain. Also at this point in time, we have a connection from the third eye that also goes to the right brain. But this is also connected to what we can call the heart chakra. So there's a communication back and forth there. What happens at this point? At this point, it's shifted over to the left brain. Now the left brain is known to operate the physicality. That's where all the software is for how we create realities within the physical form. So if we had to disconnect the left brain, you would not even see form. You would not have any of the sensorial aspects of it. You would not be able to function of physicality. The physicality actually merges back into this part. So in essence, it plays a very integral role of communication, or of actually creating expressions and realities. So the left brain basically takes the information from the right brain and moves it over and looks at it and says, okay, how can we use this? And let's create form around that. Now, what is the left brain is experiencing, because that's connected to all the other aspects of it, all the feedback that's coming back from the experience is also transmitted back to the third eye, transmitted back to the right brain, and is also transmitted back to the heart chakra, back to the soul. So there's a sharing of all this information back and forth, information, consciousness, and various experiences. And then, of course, as it's transmitted out, it's transmitted into the oversoul, and the oversoul shares it in that respect. But at the same time, it's also shared with your twin soul and back and forth, and there's a dialogue that's always going on throughout this whole part. It doesn't stop there. We also have the other aspects of our DNA. So a typical physicality has 12 DNA strands. Well, 12 DNA strands, but there's replicates of the same 12 DNA strands. What are the DNA strands? They're transmitters, receivers also. They carry already a cluster of information, but they're transmitter receiver to different races. So what makes up the physical form? The physical form, what we call human physical form, is made up of these 12 DNA strands. Now, some people have more. They may have 13, 14, or whatever. Those are the ones that have been a little bit created through hybridating or adding various extra strands so that it has access. Now, what does the DNA strands do? DNA strands communicates with different races and different experience channels. They're still within the same cluster, but they communicate back and forth. So one of the things you've probably heard is that, we only use 2 out of the 12 strands that we originally would have. And that the purpose of that was there was a modification that took place some 10,000 years ago, which was an experiment, because you have to look at the human experience as already one level of experiment. But then there was a secondary level experiment where, okay, if we can cut off isolation and make this separation to be accentuated, why don't we just cut off 10 of the channels of communication to other races and their physical forms and so forth and how we communicate, and just allow these 2 to be, and we'll keep those 2 in tune to the point where it has very limited access. However, the makeup of the physicality still utilizes all 12. It's just not upgraded. It's like this. We've made it with all these channels, but we've turned off or the capacity to communicate back and forth like it used to. But they still dictate, because the information is stored in the DNA to represent this particular physicality, because human forms look the way they look because of those DNA strands and then the genetic codes that have come through it. So that plays a role. Of course, there's the genetic codes that come within, and the genetic codes are programmed. Of course, the genetic codes are shared through genes and so forth. And that is coming through at this point in time through the lineage and experiences and so forth. It's not connected to the soul, but the soul learns from it and shares it back and forth. Now, when we're looking at the genetic codes, basically it's a makeup of all your different families and extensions and so forth, and interactions from all the different, different pools of genetic codes that have come together to make up your particular physical form. And then the one that's going to accentuate more than the other will depend on what experience you want to have. So that plays a role. And there's not only that, there's information within it, and that information also is accessible and is communicating. And part of the process that we're going now is to gently reactivate the other DNA strand, and also to lift off some of the barriers and filters that we've put on the various two that were still functioning. Now, most of us started to utilize more of it, and the ones that have come with extra DNA strands, most of those are already pretty well active, in essence. So they're already getting input from, other realms. Let's put it this way: more constantly and more very different, because the DNA actually helps experience the physical aspect of it. Now, for us coming here on the planet, as we've learned, a lot of us are looking at and saying, well, okay, we are in the physical form. Yes, you have taken on a physical form. You are engaged in that, what we call the holographic expression and experience, and you're learning and expanding at a soul level. But at the same time, what you experience in your physicality is also transmitted through all of these. So it's transmitted to Source, it's transmitted to every single soul on the planet, it's transmitted through the creation field, it's transmitted through, of course, all your souls, but it's transmitted through the solar plexus. So that means every single physicality is upgraded, and also through the sacral, which is basically now any interconnection that you have that is a more intimate level is also expanding, and the communication through the root chakra that's going into the planet is also expanded. So you could see how all of this is interconnected, and how much more you are than this physical form, or what we call the physical adopted idea of who you are. So you can see how all of that is playing out. And the thing is, the game that we are playing, which we call life, okay, is an expansion of that sourceness that you are, okay? So the refinement that you go through is a refinement of the piece of the puzzle that makes up one of these little clusters. As you become refined and other aspects become refined, the form of this puzzle, what we can look at is at this point, this puzzle, which we're all little pieces of and so forth. As these completion comes in, this piece is completed, but this piece belongs to other pieces. And it makes up, and then eventually what it basically does, it completes the tapestry of this creation of Source itself. So now that you have a better understanding of how all of this works, we've come here in this physical form to really experience the human experience. Now, in understanding that, and the reason that we're tapping into what we call our true self, higher self, is that we are, as I said earlier, bringing in more of this input and utilizing rather than filtering it out. So, the brain itself, which also has an ego software program, we run on software. So we're upgrading the software, but at the same time we're upgrading how we experience life. And our natural state is fluidity. It's not requiring polarity as we've played it in the past. You know, people have talked about it and they say, well, we only learn through pain, through intensities, and so forth. Well, we did create that opportunity to experience it that way some time ago. It wasn't the original design, but it was put in place where we needed to have the extremes of both ends before we can be able to see the mix between the two and to be able to experience it fully. So in essence, when you're looking at it, we were learning through polarities and the goods and bads and rights and wrongs and so forth, which were just adopted ideas because none of that really exists. But we've created that idea. So we were learning through those polarities. We were learning through all the accentuations of all aspects of that. At the same time, we were also learning where we had to replay everything over and over again for us to learn. That means that until I did it over and over again and convinced myself that I now figured it out, or I can actually move on to the next level of experience, we tend to repeat and replicate over and over and over again. But we're not only replicating in this lifetime, we've been replicating it in all lifetimes, in many lifetimes. And one of the things that has been coming through right now is that with this advancement that's going in, and also the expediting that we are processing through, the souls itself have basically a record of a lot of experiences. So for example, each time the soul actually takes on a form or plays at different realms, it's basically logging the experiences. And those experiences are put in place and reviewed, and then it's decided how we're going to use it. What are we going to do with it? And then it will create another list of experiences it wants to complete or experience. Now, for example, you took on one life, just taking one life, and in that particular life, you were trying to learn something from even previous lives, but say in that life you wanted to learn a certain aspect of your experience. And you wanted to do that in a way where in that lifetime we played in polarity. In this lifetime you say, well, I want to experience the opposite, or I want to wrap this up because I wasn't able to do it. Now, in each lifetime you're going to bring in a list of things that you want to learn and play and experience and so forth. However, that's not, you know, it's never achieved completely, and sometimes we go through it very quickly and then we bring other in. So this is transmitted through the soul. It carries that and it's transmitted to the physical form, but it decides at this point in time what it wants to experience. And then it starts to create that within the physical form. But with the experience of things moving up much more quickly now, what is happening is it starts to review the list and says, okay, let's see what is useful and what isn't. Because as we're opening these other channels, if there are other aspects of other souls or other aspects of physical form or anything else that we can tap into that's already experienced some of these things on the list, then we can start canceling them off and just tap into their experience, integrate it within our experience, have that particular experience come through, and we're done. So basically it looks at all that. Plus it also looks at what things are no longer applicable based on the energies and consciousness that we're stepping into, the dimensional consciousness that we're stepping into. So it may look at several of them and say, okay, well, this is not applicable any longer and this is not applicable any longer, so we're going to take that out. These other ones here, which we're looking at, we can tap these two, we can get from other resources. Or we can go through the DNA, or we can go through the family lineage, and we can tap into that and bring that in as part of our experience. So in essence, it takes all of that. Now, the key here is the way it used to do it is that if it needed a particular experience, for example, it wanted to see itself as a victimizer, Okay, it would come on and adopt that and tap into what that would look like and what roles it can be played on, and also look at the collective consciousness and how it can dynamically create that within that system, and say, okay, let me replicate that particular role of a victimizer. Now, it doesn't do that any longer. It basically says, okay, victimizer, we didn't really get that experience. Do we need it? Looks at it, you know, we can look at it because we haven't really wrapped it up because we've been the victim so often, and it has nothing to do with karma, but it was to do with this whole aspect of it, which we'll talk about karma another time. But in essence, what we're looking at is saying, okay, well, we can do without all of this, and we don't have to replicate it in the same way, so we're going to create it through observation of others, and we don't even have to actually play that particular role in any way, shape, or form. And it can do that also by tapping into the higher self and be able to tap into other resources. It'd be able to actually not only get one channel of experience within it, so, okay, I'm going to, because if you integrate one of those things in your physical form, you have to express an experience in physical form. But to do that, you have to get participants. You have to get other playmates that have to come in and play the role that are looking to be a victim. So you need to play that out, and then there's a process that you go through, and that process that will take some time. And at times you can do it fairly quickly, other times you can't, because sometimes you say, well, you know, if I go into that and I get saturated with it or get caught into that, I may have to play it for a while. In essence, then at this point, it takes a lot longer to experience it. The way it looks at it now, it says, okay, how can we do it? Let's bring it in and let's create reality. So it can use the dream state. It can use all different other aspects if it requires it to complete that aspect to create some form of balance. Now, the thing is, the souls used to work on balance. Basically, and that's how karma came about, the idea of karma, and that will be a whole topic in itself. But in essence, we're not going to go there. The soul needed balance. It wanted to play one side to the other. Now the soul hasn't wanted that in over 30 years because it has been agreed that that is too slow of a process, no longer is applicable to the way that we are choosing to move forward on a collective scale. And when I say collective, we're not even talking planet Earth. We're talking about right down to galaxies and universes at this point in time. That's that large of a collective. So as it's streaming all that through the souls at this point in time and say, okay, how can we do it more quickly? And it also goes into these different resources. So sometimes when we're going through that, it looks like we're almost taking steps back, but really we're not taking steps back. We're basically stepping back far enough to be able to experience it. So we have this that's being streamed, that we now say, okay, we have this that we want to accomplish within it. The other thing is, as we're coming in as a particular soul, we also have us coming through family. And within family, we may make agreements with other souls from your cluster, but other souls that are what you can call soulmates. And soulmates are just basically souls that have agreed to play together and play a specific role. And they will make agreements and saying, well, if I come into your life, I will help you play this role, and you play this role for me. So I will play a role for you, and you play a role for me, and we can learn and move faster. But it's done very quickly in and out, and also how applicable it is based on how things are changing and who else is playing the roles, because things are changing so constantly, you may not have to play it all out. It doesn't matter what the original agreement may have been. It could dissolve even before you even get close to doing it. So there's a lot of things that are changing in that respect. So we also take on from the family, from our lineage, we also take on certain things that we agree to experience within the lineage. And so what we experience there, so what we're looking at is the next channel that we're talking about, which comes in through the genetic codes. We are basically rewriting the genetic codes, and it's also filtering into the lineage, which is your family, your immediate family connection. Even though they may or may not be on the planet, it still facilitates. And then, of course, we have the more direct connection through here, through isolated, what we call souls. So, for example, if your mom's not on the planet any longer, through the third eye, you're still going to connect and communicate with your mother soul, or the mother that played that role, mother, because there is no real mother, but on a physical projection and replication, we have labeled it as mother. So you would be able to communicate and take on certain things that, so say your mother decides that it's not want to maintain a form, and says, okay, I'm going to stay without form, but I'm going to want to complete some of these things. Can you take care of it? And I'm going to stay connected with you, and I'm going to learn through your physicality. Okay. Now you're not going to take it on and say, well, I got to carry the burden of my family. You're actually excited to some degree, unconsciously, of course, to say, okay, look, this is what I want to do. I'm going to experience this, and I'll take that down. You haven't been able to complete it. I'm going to complete it and play with that, learn and expand for my own personal self, and also be able to stream it up to you. The other thing is, as you're experiencing in the physical form, as you're changing certain things in your reality and so forth, you're also facilitating your immediate families and other connections that you have, so that in actual fact, your level of communication and dance, or what we can call dance that you have with them, it starts to change too. So that becomes the next level that it looks into. So you can see how much connection we have. So when you look at it, we're not just this physicality, and here we are, and we got to look at some other things, because one of the mentalities that people have carried for a long time is that we have no control over how we experience life. And not only any control, and the word control is not correct, but the navigational ability to navigate our own life and to create our own realities. The point is, as much as we have adopted that idea and we've experienced it with that adopted idea, it does not really apply in that way. But unconsciously, we know that. Consciously, we create it to a facet that we cannot really relate with that whole idea. So the truth is that you are fully in charge of your reality, your creation, and how you choose to create and how you choose to interact with other aspects of yourself that are creating, and the dances that you do within. And it's the same with every single soul, and every single physical form is in charge of their reality. Now, so say someone plays a role and you take on the idea that somebody did something wrong to you. Well, the whole idea really is just that, an idea that was adopted through the consciousness of separation. The fact that someone plays a role, it is a mutual agreement that that role was important for you to experience, to facilitate you to move forward, to complete certain things on a list, to be able to stream some new levels into the oversoul, to upgrade your communication, to upgrade your physical form, to basically complete lineage. I mean, there's so many different aspects that all play out. So all of that is taking place. So when you really look at it, when you start tapping into your higher self more, and that means you become more conscious and you're much more aware of its existence, and you start tapping into it, you get to see much more of the communication. Is it going to happen like this? Not in most cases. In essence, what happens is you start integrating it bit by bit, because you have to remember, the left brain is the computer. I know I didn't say it before, but it is. It's the computer, the processor, that actually creates this projection, the holographic projection, using the energies coming from the full spectrum of all essence. And it's basically creating that beautiful field of light, which is expressed in a sensorial aspect. And you can feel things and so forth, because everything around you is just holographic anyways. But the computer here takes that information and utilizes and creates form. So here we are playing in form, or what looks like form. Now, if you start putting all of this information all at once, it becomes a little bit overloaded, because it hasn't gone into those areas and it hasn't been able to process a lot of that. So there is an upgrading that is taking place, but you're going to have to bring it in. Now, it's not anywhere as slow as it used to be, because before it was extremely slow. Everything took a tremendous amount of time to make it happen. Now, it's not the case. Now, the rewiring, the upgrading of the software and so forth is happening a lot quicker. So in essence, the brain itself that is actually holding on to this holographic expression and experience is upgrading so that it can start to integrate more of that and more of the information. As the different chakras start opening up further and so forth, the communication level is increased, the veils and filters are removed, there's much more of that. And all of this, again, accentuates your human experience. When you really look at it, is there, a system of experiencing life? There's adopted experience that we've co-created and have agreed to maintain. Now, I know people start talking about, yes, how can we change rather quickly? We want to change the way we exist life. And then the question comes out is like, why would you want to do such a thing? And the reason we ask that is so that you get an idea of why and what the motive behind it. It's not that I'm saying it's the wrong thing to do or is not the way to go. Absolutely, you want to go that route. However, you want to look at it and say, okay, what is my ultimate goal in transcending all of this stuff? Moving out of it, moving through it, or making that adjustment into a degree where, I'm out of here. Because it's not really being out of here. As much as a lot of us get so caught up in the intensity of the human experience of how we're playing in this particular game, that at times we get to the point where we say, enough is enough, I don't want to do this anymore. And again, those are all automatic programs, ego programs and so forth, which we won't get into all these details today, that kick in, that is basically making you feel in that way. Because in essence, it doesn't really work that way. So when we're looking at the rules of life, if we want to call it that, it's just an idea. The rules of life, what does that mean? Are there any rules? They say, well, there's universal laws and there's universal ways of functioning. As Source itself, there are no rules. There are no limits. There are no specific creations. You're in a full field of pure potentiality, and it creates within that. There are no rules. However, to create certain levels of experiences in the different clusters, you put in a set of guidelines, and within the guidelines you create certain parts that are not changeable for a period of time while those experiences are completed. It's the same thing that we talk about. We have all these capabilities, our physicalities with our capacity. Once functioning, we're telepathic, and many more people are using telepathic levels of communication. Using voice is a very slow, but even though at this realm it actually works very well because of the sound, it creates form and enforces form. But at the same time, it also manipulates, or what basically shapes, realities within it. However, it's a lot more efficient. There's no interpretation aspects of it, of how it's pronounced and how it's said, who says it, or whatever it is, or it doesn't have to be in different languages and so forth. It's much more direct, and it's basically communicating at this level, where it's going right in, and basically it's expressed and experienced within the whole aspects of the human experience. So you can see how all of that plays out. So we have telepathic ways, we can teleportate, and we can do all types of different things, elevate, levitate, whatever they call it, yes. I have to excuse my words sometimes, it comes fast and I can't find the words for it. But in essence, there's a lot of capabilities that we have, and we can more instantaneously change our reality. So for example, I want an ice cream, and you can just manifest the ice cream. Right now, we're still creating a lag within it because they have so many different inputs, and then of course the reasoning, why do I want the ice cream? Is it just a concept, an idea, or is it an actual fact? Well, I want to experience it. Yes, you've experienced it many times. Do you need to experience it instantaneously now, or are we going to go through the process of purchasing it and going to some way to do it or prepare it? But how many things are happening while you're doing that? There's many things that take place. So that is also part of the enrichment that we adopt within that. So there's a purpose within that slower way of creation. However, as things are speeding up and energies are increasing and so forth, our what we can call creative abilities and manifestation of things that we will create it a lot faster, and that's what we're doing. It's happening much more quicker. And if you look at it now, even time and everything else seems like it's speeded up, and it is, because on a perceptual level it has, in a sense, because everything is moving so much quicker, and the time frame is not so rigid, because time has no consistency. It's very just fluid, depending on whatever you want to experience and how you want to experience, how long you want to stay there. But the push right now is to move through it quickly, so everything seems a lot quicker. Plus, it gives you time to kind of purge out what no longer serves you anyways, because you don't have enough time to do everything, and there's going to be more exciting things you want to do, and you don't want to do all the repetitive stuff. So guess what? You're going to start looking at, well, I need this, don't need this, and so forth. So you start changing that. So when people say, well, do you manifest and so forth, we all manifest. We're always manifesting. The only reason we exist is because we manifest. It's just that at times we look at it and we judge the whole idea of what we're manifesting and say, well, I'm not manifesting because I'm not getting what I want. Well, you know, the thing is, there's much more to that than what you want. Where's the want coming from? Is it ego-based software program, or is it just something that the left brain has adopted as something that it's doing, or is that because it's observing someone else and saying, well, I want the same thing because, look, they look like they're having fun, now maybe I want to have fun too in that same way. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's no limits to that aspect of it. But however, is it still in alignment with everything else that you have chosen to do from many, many levels? Because in essence, it's not just what the soul is dictating, but you have to understand the physicality. So any physical form that you come into, when you really look at it, and say, well, I'm taking on a physical form, you have to understand the physical form is not totally governed in a sense where it's saying, okay, it's taken on this form because my soul dictates just this is what it was. No, it basically, there's more to that. There is an agreement that's taking place before even the soul gets involved, where the physicality wants to replicate and actually experience itself going through the replication process, but at the same time also what it can gain through that aspect of that particular experience. So physical form is created, an additional physical form, and then certain things are encoded within it. Again, there's parts of the DNA, there's the innate aspect of it, of the physicality and so forth, that comes into play, and then what the particular roles that are chosen to play within that particular family. And then the soul decides, okay, do I want to play that role? And if it says, okay, I can accept that physicality in the way it is, and I will like to make some changes, but also to be kind of in the navigating point. But before it even does that, it has to also have a communication with the parents and have a communication with the rest of the family at a soul level to find out, okay, this is what I'm coming here to do. This is my list and my things I need to do. How is yours apply, and how can we actually work hand in hand with that, so that I assist you and you assist me, and then we both all move forward, or the cluster moves forward, basically, of that family dynamics. So when you're looking at all of that, there's so many levels of all of this that takes place. Now, did you come here because you were kind of dictated and you had no choice? That's never the case. Now, I know there's been talk and things being said by channelers and so forth that, you know, we've kind of been hijacked, or in believing that we have to continue reincarnating. Well, in a sense, that still plays a role, and it's not really hijacking. It's basically you're implanted with the idea at a soul level that the only way you're going to make progress is that you take on physical form. And then you observe that and you decide, yeah, okay, I can do that. Now, what happens is we were putting imprints, there was imprints being put into the soul, which basically were records. It's like your computer, like you can remember passwords and so forth. You can program it to record. So it remembers planet Earth because, say, it's been here many times, and it creates a record that you've been on planet Earth. So it starts to see planet Earth as one of the more viable option. And then, of course, it also used to accentuate much more that, you know, if you go back there, you can pick up the pieces and continue. Now, of course, you're going to have a different form, probably a different gender, probably a different culture. You're going to have, the physicality that's going to have some pluses and minuses of what we relate as pluses and minuses of a different nature. So you can utilize it as a part of your experience. However, now, with all the changes that are going on, these records are being erased. So the moment that this particular soul is finished on planet Earth in this last incarnation, or what we call last incarnation, this incarnation, these records are cleared out. So in essence, and all of this becomes reviewed and wrapped up completely. And it basically now looks at everything completely anew. So it has the option not only to just have an automatic default back to planet Earth, it has the automatic capacity to look at all the different options, and it can now go on to different planets, take on different forms, stay in non-form, and never feel that, okay, if I don't do this, I won't complete and won't go into that obsession, what we can call soulless obsession, as a lack of better words. And what does that obsession mean? It's like anybody that plays a video game and you get to a certain level and the game is ended because somehow you got killed, or you didn't finish it, and so forth. You want to go back and start playing the game again just to pick up the pace and carry on. And that was kind of what was happening at a soul level, but that is not so relevant at this time. Now, of course, a lot of the souls that have come here still have that imprint, but the moment you leave off the planet, what we call that disconnection that happens, basically at that point in time, that is cleared off. So even though we have all of that still in place now that you've taken on and have come here, a lot of it is being erased even along the experience at this point. So when we're looking at the innate, let's take a look at one last thing before we go into wrapping up how we connect with the higher aspects of ourselves. Every single cell has memory. Every single cell has operating program. Every single cell makes up the whole and has access to the whole. Yes, every cell, as being that it's one particular expression of cell, it takes on various frequencies within it, and so it doesn't replicate aspects of it. So it carries that spectrum of light that creates, say, the finger, the arm, the hand, the leg, foot, and so forth. And they're made of clusters. However, all the information is always constantly shared throughout the whole body. Now, I know we started with part of the experience intensities and getting lost in the game. We started to isolate and cut back the level of communication, which people started labeling as blocks and so forth. In a way, that's what it kind of looked like, because basically it's not communicating with all the cells. But the cells itself, the basic fundamental of the cells, carry the full encodement of all its potential that it can do in physical form. So that cell, which is just pure light and consciousness, that carries a certain vibration, has the information of complete wholeness. So it can be and play out anything and everything. So when we're looking at that, people talk about, health and whatever else is going on in physical form. Once you've gained and wrapped up some of the things you need to do, and you're tapping into this, basically these inputs kind of act as a reminder of what's potential capacity, but you're now tapping into the cells of the body, and the cells of the body have the actual codes, besides the layer of codes that was put in front of it, the codes of it perfect, what you can call perfect health, perfect physical form, perfect expression of that holographic light. So in essence, once you wrapped up certain things that you need to learn and do whatever you need to do, in essence, you're able to activate that. And that's how it becomes very important to start communicating much more clearly with your physical form. Now, the misunderstanding that a lot of people have is that, you know, they come here, they got to do what they need to do, and I want to be out of here as fast as possible. Okay? That may look like a good idea because of the fact that we have such high levels of judgment of the human experience, but in essence, on a bigger perspective, you want to get as much done as possible, because the re-entry again is something you don't want to continue doing. Okay? And in essence, you want to do it and be here for a longer period of time if possible. However, of course, you're going to change certain things. The particular physicalities, and I know it's been probably shared by others now, but you know, it's always been known that this particular physicality has the capacity and its actual natural design to completely renew itself over and over and over again and maintain a youthful and vibrant state for 1,000 years. So you don't even have to leave the physicality. The soul can actually embody. And if this particular soul is done with this particular experience, it can leave, and then a drop-in soul can come in. And I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole different topic, and we can go into that some other time. So in essence, this physicality can keep going. It does not need to deteriorate. Okay, it is encoded now with this subcode, or what we can call overlay code, that it has only a certain lifespan, and at a certain point it starts to deteriorate and so forth. So basically it starts shutting down the communication, and it starts shutting down the cell's its own innate access within it. So in actual, it just basically cuts off its natural innate access of or information of how to create a vibrant cell constantly and continue to replicate in that state, and then just adopt this other cell that actually program and memory of it deteriorating. And in essence, but once you take that out of the equation and let that one be reactivated, so there's processes and stuff that will be shared at a later date, how you can actually communicate more with your physicality. But one of the ways you can do that is through meditation, or through just going into a quiet space and just communicating. And you know, looking at how your communication is, how you observe your physicality. I mean, lots and lots of people, it doesn't matter how you look, what you're doing, whatever it is, we judge our human experience, we judge our physicality, we judge anything and everything that we've done. In fact, I mean, we'll talk about this in more expanded ways, but in fact, every experience you've had at any point in time in your life has always been perfect for the time that it was created and replicated and so forth, so that you could actually do what you came here to do. As part of that, this doesn't mean that's all you came here to do. You came to do tremendous amount, and even that opens up a whole new chapter over and over and over again with different chapters, because in essence you're not limited to one stream, where before at one point in time is that you needed many lives to experience progress. Now you can do it a lot faster and a lot more efficient in one lifetime. So you're basically opening up your capacity to create an experience and to enhance at the same time. Now, when you're looking at the external world and the systems that we have in place, I mean, that's a whole topic. Again, we're looking at that. That's still part and parcel of the connection or reflection of the holographic. So we look at the world and we say, okay, well, there's all these things going on that really I'm not enjoying. In essence, it's not so much a mirror like a lot of people like to refer. There are going to be applications where that kind of plays that role, but in essence, we're co-creating that particular reality that we're engaged in. But within that reality, we're choosing to stay within that reality, play a specific part of that reality, only to facilitate other reality players. So we look at it and say, well, okay, I've outgrown the system or the game of life the way we've been playing it. Then if that's the case, where does the change start? It starts with you. So in essence, you start making changes the way you view things, how you react, how you respond, how you choose to play and do your part of your life. And that is the first part of it. And in that, you get to understand and really have a better understanding and connection with your own physicality. So I won't expand it any further. So we're going to go into the next part of it, which is going to be much shorter, of course, where we're going to talk about how do we access, our true self and higher self. Well, the thing is, we have connection all the time. The thing is, what we've done is that we've started to, for some time, and even in the entry point here, we've eliminated or reduced our access considerably so that we can actually have the more human experience, but also give us the opportunity to upgrade the brain, to upgrade the physicality, to basically, while we're doing that, to upgrade the lineages that we're connected to. And then to also, at this point in time, to limit some of the input and external sharing that's going on from all these levels so that we could actually integrate the full human experience and to feel the limitation within the human experience, or what we call limitation, in essence, at that point in time. So what we've done had a purpose for it, and we had created it. So now, as you're looking at it, and this is where the observer part comes in, when you start looking at your life and you start looking at how you're experiencing life, like first of all, how much time is spent present in the moment, which people refer to, living in that presence, or how much of it are we lingering in the past and playing within that field of energy and recreating a lot of it. And how much are we projecting and living for tomorrow, or the idea of tomorrow, because if I figure all this out, tomorrow is going to be better. How much time is being spent in this moment? And that's something that you set time to observe. Am I in the moment? Am I looking at this with my new perspective rather than utilizing what I've experienced in the past? Or that in some way I have to look at the fact of the future. What is my future going to look like? And how am I going to shape my moment now to look in that future? Well, I'm not saying you don't, but in essence, that part of it becomes stagnant and limited if you're looking at the future from the viewpoint that you are right now. Because your present viewpoint, if you're looking at it, your present viewpoint, a lot of it has passed, so you want to look at that and say, well, okay, I'm looking at the past, and then you're projecting from past and your present state of observation and state of understanding, and you're projecting a future based on those resources. By living in the moment, you see the perfection of whatever was experienced in the past, and you let that go. What the nuggets of consciousness you gained and whatever else, yeah, you utilize. But you start living this moment, and you start observing this moment. And within this moment, you're basically experiencing it fully, and that allows you to create the next moment that is more expanded than the one that you're experiencing. Because as your observation point expands, as you become more aware of your experiences and you accept these experiences that you have created as part of your experience, you allow that to upgrade and to move forward. So you're no longer stagnant. So your future becomes grander and grander and grander, but it's not only your future, but it's the future of the collective, it's the future of everyone that you're going to play with. All of it ends up changing, upgrading. Because the future doesn't really ever exist. The future is something that you create from the moment that you are, but if you're utilizing the past and so forth. So that becomes a part of the factor. So if you start living in the moment, you start to establish a higher communication at these different levels, and then focus on some of these levels in your quiet state. So you can tap into, at this point in time, you're quieting yourself, okay, you focus into the root chakra, and you allow yourself to be able to connect with the planet. And you can feel how the planet feels. You can feel everything on the planet. You can be able to communicate back and forth, and it becomes a beautiful cosmic dance. It becomes very exhilarating because you're feeling all of it. And of course, as you're going along, and there's different steps and processes that we'll talk about, that when you start clearing all of that, you become much more clear. So you're not actually picking up things and then interpreting it a certain way and then having a reaction on a physical form. This is where it becomes very important to get into a clearer state, in which this is all about clearing too at some point, but not here. this level of communication that we're talking about becomes very much more intimate, much more clear, and it's utilized in a much more beneficial way. Current, not because it's always been beneficial, but now it's much more current. The same thing with the sacral. When you are communicating at that level there, it becomes a completely whole different experience. It becomes so connected, so oneness oriented, and the merging that occurs is just amazing. Of course, at the heart chakra, your communication with your soul becomes second nature. It's so easy and it becomes so fluid. And you'll be able to tap into that. And then it's not like, oh, I got to grab all this information, bring it into this reality and start creating my new reality. You bring it in, you observe, and you look at it. How much do I apply? What can I use? Oh, I'll put this piece in, that piece in. The rest of it is fine. And then whatever you're experiencing, you're sharing it right back into the whole cluster. So you're getting information, and then it's utilized, experienced, and then shared back and forth. The same thing with the throat chakra. Of course, at that level, you're now focusing through creation, and with the sound, so your voice changes, your way you feel with the energies around you, everything starts to shift. And that's all, again, you take these steps by doing all the various processes, and also through the quietening process. Third eye, I mean, this is like amazing for how much you can tap into that, because you can tap into any soul anywhere. Okay, you can tap into any levels of collective consciousness. You could see it, you could experience it, and then utilize any part of it. You can bring it into this part of it and start shifting your reality a certain way. It's not to blow any of this. It's basically you just plug it in. You plug in what you need. You know, it's like going to any store. You don't want everything that's in the store. You're just going to take what you want to use for that period of time. And it's the same way. You're going through a store. It's like the library. You go to the library, and the library is always upgrading, or even the internet and so forth. It's always upgrading. You're going to go in there and access what you're looking for now, what you want to use now. Then once you bring it into the moment, you experience it in the moment, then of course you're going to be ready for something else. And this is the thing, a lot of times we're trying to run before we even have learned how to crawl, in a sense, because we've been so disconnected. It's like, okay, open the floodgates, let's have all this come in all at once. Well, I can tell you, it's not going to be pleasant, and it's going to probably blow a hell of a lot of circuits, and it's not going to be an experience that you're going to be able to walk through it that easily. So the thing is, that's not the purpose, you know, and the thing is that, oh, I want to get it done and off this planet. That's coming from a perspective where there's so much disconnected that you've looked at yourself as a physical form and you say, okay, anything is better than this. I need to get out of this. Well, I mean, if that was the case, you can get out at any time. There is no limits when you can leave or anything of that nature. However, who's making that choice? Is it the ego mind? Is it the software and the computer is making that decision, or is that decision made throughout the whole aspect of every level of connection that you have? Remember, you're not here just for one thing. You're not here just for the soul. The physicality and everything that's connected to it remains connected. Just because you pull this out of the equation, all these connections are still there, and it's still connected to the whole. This pulls out of the equation and another one steps in, it just picks up the piece where it was. It starts to stream some new information. Of course, it may come from a different cluster, or it might be one from the same cluster, but it could be from a whole different oversoul that comes in. And in that case, then of course it starts to stream other information, and then it starts to create alterations within this, and of course the level of communication on each of these levels start to change accordingly, because again, that is one of the key points. So as you can see, it all plays. Now, what I was saying, at some point, you know, moving forward, we end up clearing out the need for individualized channels, because now you merge with everything. Even though that you are connected, but we don't have that connection enabled. Yeah, it's disabled. And the reason we have it disabled, and it's not even true, that's not even the correct word. It's not disabled, it's actually greatly limited, because we wanted to fine-tune it in different channels so that we could have this particular experience. This is like, again, a design. You know, you're going to make some vehicle, because the physicality is a vehicle. That particular vehicle has a certain operating system that it was designed for a very specific purpose. So in essence, when you're looking at all of this, it's going to you're going to look at it and say, well, okay, this is how we have created to function, so that we're not going to be the one at the moment. We're going to create isolation to a certain degree, but we're going to have all these channels, because that way we're not. But we're still in the same field. We never left this. We'll never leave. It's not like I want to go home, because a lot of people say, well, I want to go home. Well, what does that mean? Does anybody have a home? You already had home. It's just that you're experiencing a specific holographic expression, but you're at home because you're still inside this whole field. You never left the field. You're just creating within the field. Now, I know some people, or some souls, or people, whatever you want to say, well, I want to leave, I want to go home, and I don't belong on this planet. Well, in essence, you know, nobody belongs on any planet, because no one's from a planet. Now, the only reason you may feel an attachment to a particular planet is because that particular soul, for whatever reason, for many reasons, but one particular reason, has had many lifetimes on one particular planet. So it became very comfortable. It's like us taking a vacation. If you're going to go to Cuba over and over and over again, you're going to want to go to Cuba more than you want to be wherever you are, because you've associated that Cuba represents something to you, and the warmth and this and that, the people, whatever, the way of life and so forth. And you say, well, I feel more at home being in Cuba, for example. I'm just giving you an example here. It's the same thing with a planet. So if you've been on a particular planet many, many times, that one may feel more at home. However, you came onto this planet because what you were doing on that planet, you couldn't gain in this. You couldn't gain what you can gain here. And knowing that you had a bigger purpose, you wanted to come on this planet for that particular reason. Now, then there's other souls that come onto the planet to enhance the experience that's happening on this particular planet in the physical form. So they will be called starseeds, and of course you have indigos, and you have whatever they call rainbow children. You had what else is there? There was other ones. Anyways, crystal, and you have many, many different labels but they're just souls that have come with different programs and so forth to enhance. But they all take on a human form to play that particular role and to facilitate. So you see how all of it is tied in. So in essence, when we're going back to the whole accessing our higher self, is the first part is to live in the moment, and then there are other ways that we can go through processes to facilitate in doing that much more efficiently. And you'll know when that's the case, because you will connect with the people that will facilitate, that have already done it or have created certain parts of it. Or you'll be able to tap into certain fields of that. But if you wanted to have a group experience and so forth, that can also be brought into the mix. In saying all of that and everything that I've shared, this gives you, hopefully I didn't overload you, but I've tried to keep it as simple as possible while covering as much territory as I've felt that you would be able to accept at this point in time. Do not be concerned if things feel overloaded or overwhelming, but for many of you it's like a certain clarity, but there might be a clarity within yourself that basically the mind's still not wrapped its head around, as that terminology goes. In essence, it will, and the fact that you listen to this and you're going to re-listen to this is just a confirmation that you were ready to hear what you had to hear. How much you use right away will depend on what is beneficial for you at this time. So depending on the stages that you are going through.